What is up? What's up? Welcome. Happy Tuesday. We're back for Tuesday training as always. I'm here every Tuesday for you, working on doing things to help you learn a little bit about your business so that you can get a little bit better at it, right? Improve your processes, which is really what we're going to talk about today. Help more people, close more business, make more money, grow as an agent, agency, whatever it is that you're doing out there. So, number one and foremost, thanks for tuning in. We always appreciate having you guys. This is going to be a good show. We're going to look at the 7 steps in the selling process, right? One of my best mentors in this business explained to me very early that everything in this business is a process. Everything involves a process, whether it's the selling process, customer attention process, et cetera, et cetera. There's a process for everything in insurance, submitting business, monitoring business, tracking commissions, whatever it is. Processes are everywhere. And if you want to be great at being an agent in this business, and probably just about any business, to be honest with you, especially sales, you need to learn to become process oriented. You need to look at the processes that are involved in your business, even if you're a single agent out there. You need to really get a handle on the processes that are involved in your business and how you can create efficiencies within those processes that are going to make you more productive. Fairly simple concept, right? That's what we're going to dive into today. As always, this show is brought to you by MetaZeus. I was looking in MetaZeus yesterday and helping out a client that had gotten bounced. Unbeknownst to them, they didn't realize that the conversation they were having with this representative was going to bounce them to a new plan. And lo and behold, they were. MetaZeus told me which plan they got bounced to so that I can do some further research, compare that plan, and say, hey, maybe that is the right plan for you. Turns out it's not. And we're going to work with that person, hopefully, to see if we can get that thing moved back somehow. So we'll see, because open enrollment period is officially over, right? It ended on Sunday, and now we are back to just regular old selling season. Other than some straggling SEPs, there are some different SEPs still available in some states. MetaZeus will help you identify when your clients are getting bounced during those SEPs so that you can better serve them, even if you're not able to rescue the business. At least you can find out what's going on and then maybe tee them up for an AEP flip back to you. But great platform, man. If you're an agent out there doing anything in the Medicare space, particularly Medicare Advantage prescription drug plans, I would highly encourage you to grab MetaZeus, get it there because it's going to allow you to monitor your book in real time. And you'll know exactly what's going on with it. You will not be surprised by chargebacks, but you will be able to head off plan changes ahead of time very often, right? If you can catch it before it goes into effect, you can usually save that business, get it flipped back to you if necessary. Or in some cases, maybe it's just a matter of, hey, you know what? This is going to be the better plan for you. So let's ride with that one. We'll get through the end of the year and I'll contact you back in AEP for another plan review. So great tool. Get a hold of it. I highly encourage you to. Got a little bit of news as always. Let me jump into some of this real quick. Add this to the stage as it says, kicking it off in the world of U.S. home insurance. Your home insurance premiums may hit a record high this year. This report warns. This is straight from Insurance Journal. And it basically says right here, U.S. home insurance rates are expected to reach a record high this year, with the biggest increases occurring in states prone to severe weather events. No kidding. The average premium for home insurances in the U.S. is expected to hit $2,500 by the end of the year, driven largely by intensifying natural disasters, rising reinsurance costs, and higher fees for home repair. Ooh, this figure would represent a 6% increase over the average U.S. premium at the end of 23 and follows a roughly 20% increase over the last 2 years. If you cruise down into this article, and I'll make sure this gets into the group so you guys can definitely check into it for all you PNC characters out there. It's got a list of the steepest states, and it's funny that they leave Florida out because Florida is so far ahead of these increases already. They just addressed them in their own paragraph. But it says right here, the steepest premiums are expected for states that also have the highest risk of natural disasters. Homeowners in Florida, who already pay the highest rates of home insurance in the country, are expected to see another 7% increase this year, bringing the state average to $11,759. That is more than 4 times the national average. So yeah, if you're living in Florida and you have a home, you're already paying high rates, and they're only going to get worse. And then it goes through the next handful of states that have are expected to have the highest change. Louisiana being another one, with a projected 23% increase in home insurance rates, moving it up to an average of $7,800. Maine is the next one at 19% jump, but still only at $1,500. That's way below the national average still, but that's a big jump for them. Michigan up 14%, Utah up 13%, Montana 12%, South Carolina jumping up 11%, North Carolina 10%, Illinois 10%. I was surprised that Texas was not in that list, considering the snowpocalypse and some of the other events that we've had. But it says here further, 6 states, including Texas and Washington, will see their premiums remain almost flat this year, which cited healthier insurance market and the stabilizing effect of local legislation. South Dakota is the only likely state to see a meaningful drop in premiums, with an expectation to drop about 3%. Does anybody actually live in South Dakota? I'm kind of surprised. I didn't think anybody lived up there. But good article. You're definitely going to see some jumps in home insurance. So buckle your seatbelts for that. I'll get that article in the group. And then moving along, a wee bit of Medicare stuff. And this is another interesting one. We had this argument with Ozempic last year, or maybe 2 years ago, and now here we are with the same basic argument with Wegovy. This is that weight loss drug that people are super, super excited about. Medicare will not cover it for weight loss, but they will cover it if you're taking it for heart complications, which is technically what it's designed for, right? But because of the cost of Wegovy and the Inflation Reduction Act caps and all that stuff that are getting put in these drugs and the drug plans, I could jump up Medicare premiums instead. So you might see a higher Part B premium because of Wegovy being covered by Medicare. Blow. How is that? Well, Medicare, obviously we know because I covered it last week, has approved Wegovy not for weight loss, but for heart disease risk. And because it's so damn expensive at about $1,300 a month, and now that we have these Inflation Reduction Act caps on different drug plans, standalone drug plans, and certainly even in MAPD drug coverage, the majority of that $1,300 a month is getting past 1, Medicare, 2, back to the insurance carrier. So again, we're going to see premiums go up most likely. And they're not talking about Part D premiums. They're talking about Part B, as in boy premiums. That because this drug is so expensive and Medicare is now accepting it, at least for heart disease, that we're probably going to see that certainly, and they further state in here, right, that it's going to depend on how many people end up taking this drug, how many people get prescribed this drug. And it's already proven to be very hot, right? I mean, people are all over this Ozempic drug. Same thing's going to happen with Wegovy, but because of the accelerated price point on it, there is a good chance that Part B, as in boy, premiums might be affected by this. And it says that it's possible premiums go up as soon as 2025, but probably going to be 2026. And these are experts that are pontificating over this. Couple of other notes in here that I found pretty interesting. This year, people on Medicare Part D pay an average monthly premium of $55.50. And this is after they meet the so-called coverage gap. Patients are obviously on the hook for 25% copays. But the average Part D premium has now gone up to $55.50. I have not yet seen what Medicare is planning to release for the national drug plan average that they use to calculate penalties. If I remember correctly, it's like $33.37 right now, plus or minus $1 or $2. I might be slightly off there. But with the average consumer now paying $55.50, I can only assume that next year we're going to see that average price point as a measuring stick for Part D penalties. I'm expecting that to go up, which means Part D penalties are going to get more expensive as well. So the drug side of Medicare right now is absolutely nuts, in my opinion. With some of these drugs that they're approving, some of the drugs that they're negotiating reduced rates on, which I love the fact that they're doing that. But unfortunately, it doesn't appear that they're really penalizing Big Pharma on it. More or less, they're actually penalizing the insurance carrier that is offering that drug plan, which, as I've said many times, is going to lead to higher Part D premiums. We're already seeing it right there with now the average person spending $55 a month on their drug plan premium. So drug plan premiums are going up. Wegovy might even push the cost of Part B up. But if one thing is true, the cost of Medicare is definitely going up in one way or another, especially with this new one that I'm about to drop. So you've already probably heard about this. This was just dropped yesterday. And this is from Modern Healthcare. CMS finalizes the Medicare Advantage rate cut. They have proposed the rate cut earlier this year, and now they've finalized it. And this goes through some of the details, but this comes on the backs of pressure that's already happening to all of these Medicare Advantage plans that are seeing increased utilization rates right now. They're seeing increase for the main reason because everybody that was staving off elective surgeries during COVID because they didn't want to risk going in the hospital or clinic and getting sick, they're now getting all those elective surgeries. So you have a backlog of people that are catching up to get the healthcare that they had postponed. And then you have people that just need healthcare right now anyway, right? So that is increasing utilization, right? Which is costing Medicare Advantage plans more because they didn't expect that bump in utilization as high as it is. And now you have CMS telling them, hey, by the way, we're going to pay you less next year too. So we've already had several insurance carriers claim that, hey, if this happens, we're probably reducing benefits. If you look at it on the standalone drug plan side, you're probably going to see premiums go up again because of this. And even in Medicare Advantage plans that do have premiums, right? Because not all of them are zero premium. I was looking at a plan yesterday that's a $22 premium that we recommended for a client. Those premiums are probably going up. We could very well see benefits get thinned out on some of the plans. I'm talking about additional benefits, all the extra little sizzle that they put in these plans. But I want to run through just a couple of points in this, and it's exactly what they proposed. The Medicare Advantage benchmark rate will decline 0.16% in 2025 under the regulation, which is the same amount they proposed back in January. So back in January, CMS proposed a 0.16% reduction on the benchmark rate, and they finalized it. That's a final rule. That's what's happening now for 2025. So help you understand what's actually going on. CMS is actually going to increase the subsidy to Medicare Advantage plans by 3.7%. Okay, that's great. That's more money getting paid to the plans. However, the risk score that Medicare Advantage plans have is actually running at 3.86. So that's how they come up with that benchmark rate, right? It says right here, this little purple highlighted piece, the 2025 benchmark rate is the difference between the expected average change in revenue versus their average risk score trend. So Medicare Advantage plans are running at a 3.86% risk score trend, but they're only getting a 3.7% bump in revenue, which leaves them with 0.16%, basically a decline, right? They're losing that money. So that is going to increase the amount of cost that they are taking on because they're not getting as much reimbursement from the federal government on these plans. And then you combine that with the Inflation Reduction Act, I can't even talk today. The Inflation Reduction Act that has out-of-pocket caps, then we're going to see, again, bigger changes. As soon as this article was dropped, or as soon as this news was dropped yesterday, just about every Medicare Advantage player in the market opened this morning with drops in their stock valuation. I don't have the numbers in front of me, and I'm not sure they're in this article as I remember, but just to give you some examples, I was looking at them earlier. Humana's stock dropped about 9%. United Healthcare, I want to say around 4%, and Aetna a little over 3%, right? So all of these stock valuations have dropped because they're private insurers. They're expecting to make less money this year to be less profitable because they're going to have to pay more in claims versus the reimbursements that they're getting. Plus, they have these other regulations like the Inflation Reduction Act that are putting additional pressure on them. And you have the increased utilization right now. So they already lost money last year. Looks like they're probably going to lose money this year. The only way they can't is to really shrink back the plans, peel back benefits, and probably look at increasing some premiums. So I've said it more before, and I'll say it again. This year's 2025 AEP is shaking up to be a little crazy. So get excited. This is going to be an AEP that there's going to be a lot of change, I believe. There's going to be a lot of shakeup. You're going to see a lot of plan movement, people moving from one plan to another. So if I'm you and I'm an agent, I'm getting out of the head of the curve as fast as possible. I am taking news articles like this and I'm talking to my audience about it, assuming you have any kind of social media presence that you're targeting your audience, whether it be through paid ads, whatever you got to do. You need to get some of these messages out and start teeing up your AEP calendars now. Like I would highly recommend, like there's no reason you can't. I mean, I'm not saying you have to market using AEP language because you can't do that until 10/1, but you can definitely market that, hey, there's going to be big changes this year. There's definitely going to be big changes this year. Get in touch with us for a plan review. Very simple stuff like that. And then when they call in and talk to you, you tell them, hey, would love to help you. There's no qualifying SEP. We can look at getting you moved for 2025 next year. But let's start building that pipeline now. That's just a matter of being prepared. All right. So with that said, we're going to jump into a little bit of topic today. Like I said, I want to talk about the sales process, right? From beginning to end. Understanding how do you bring people into your process? How do you make them one of your clients? How do you take care of them after that, etc. But this is definitely a process-oriented business, just like most other businesses. I opened this call by saying that one of my best mentors told me, he's like, if you want to get great at this business, you got to learn to be process-oriented. You got to learn to look at everything in the process and how it's going to define so that you can streamline your process, improve your process, and therefore be more efficient and more productive. So fairly simple, jumping into this real fast. Bear with me just a moment. I got to fix my computer screen here a little bit. All right, what do we got? Boom, we got this. One more second, please. What's the first step of the process? Well, the first step is a pretty easy one, right? The first step is what we all have to do to get started. That is prospecting. That is step one in your 7-step process, right? Prospecting involves very simply finding and qualifying potential buyers as clients. Fairly simple, right? This is where you're going to determine your prospective customer, their particular needs. And I think the biggest part of prospecting, in my opinion, is number one, you have to identify your ideal client. If you're going to prospect effectively and you're going to build an effective prospecting method, who is your ideal client? Who's your favorite target? Who is the best person that you want in your business, the best client for you? I know who mine is. Mine is extremely defined, right? Our ideal prospect is a 65-year-old or a 64-year-old, I say, that's turning 64 and a half. They're getting ready to turn 65. They speak Spanish. And their household income or their individual income is somewhere around 30K and higher. That and they have a computer or smartphone. That's my perfect client, my perfect prospect, right? They're turning 65. That's my number one pipeline, right? So they need help with Medicare. I already understand the problem that I need to solve. This is the prospect that I can have the most impact with. They speak Spanish. We're a Spanish marketing agency. That's what we do here, right? Fairly simple. They have an income above the Medicaid thresholds. I don't have any problems with helping people that are DSNP and that need Medicaid and low income subsidy, but my ideal client is above that threshold because I'm really looking for people that I can not only enroll in a Medicare Advantage plan, but they have enough money that I can also offset the cost of that Medicare Advantage plan with something like a hospital indemnity, short-term care, cancer insurance, etc. Right? They can still afford some of those additional needs, or alternatively, I can get them a Medicare supplement plan because that's truly the product that I really believe in. Certainly market dependent on that, right? If I'm in Miami-Dade County, I'm not selling Medicare supplement plans. I'm definitely selling Medicare Advantage plans because I can bring them in with a $500 MOOP, which is absolutely nuts. Don't know how long that'll last, but it's out there. But in the prospecting stage, like you have to know who your ideal target is. If you don't know who your ideal target is, you're going to have a tough time prospecting because you don't really know who you're looking for. So you can't develop a targeted prospecting approach to find that person. I'll give you a great example. I just told you who my ideal target is. Spanish-speaking Medicare beneficiary that's just now approaching 65 years old with an income above 30K and likely has a smartphone or computer, right? I just bought a data list from USA Data, or one of USA Data's partners. I think it's called SL360 because they've updated some of their tools on there. I just bought a prospecting list. It's a cold call list. And before you get freaked out like, hey, you can't cold call Medicare. Yes, you can if you know how to do it compliantly. But I bought this list. They now allow me to target Spanish speakers on this list. And they had 4 options for language options. Do I want people that only speak Spanish? Do I want people that are bilingual, speak Spanish and English, but they prefer Spanish? And then it had a couple of other options that don't matter to me. So I was able to choose those 2 filters. I was able to put an income filter on it so that I'm only talking to people with an individual income above $30,000. So I shouldn't land in Medicaid territory. I should talk to people that have some premium dollars to spend so I can help them have a better healthcare plan. And then obviously I get their name, their date of birth, or at least their month of birth. I don't get their exact date of birth, but the month they're turning 65. So I know exactly when they're turning 65. I get their zip code, their address, and their phone number, all scrubbed against the do not call list, right? And my new agent, I'm training him how to make cold calls. I'm training him to use that prospecting list to run through it, scrub it, number one. That's kind of the first stage when you're working a list like that. You got to kind of scrub it because not all the phone numbers are going to be great. Some phone numbers are bad, right? Et cetera, et cetera. So we got to get through those, scrub them all out, eliminate those so we can keep working on the targeted folks. But that's the first level of your process is prospecting. Identify your ideal target and go out and get them. Now, what are some prospecting methods that you can use? Now, some of this depends on your marketplace, right? If you're in the Medicare space, there's certain things that you can do to prospect versus maybe in P&C or life, et cetera, but for the most part, everything's still pretty much on the table, right? You can cold call in Medicare effectively if you know how to do it, right? You can't do it with the intention to sell Medicare Advantage or drug plans, but you can do it with the intention to fact find, sell Medicare supplements, sell hospital indemnity plans, cancer insurance, et cetera, right? I can still cold call the Medicare beneficiary in all states except Ohio. That's the only state with the regulation against it. But that is a prospecting method. What are other ways to prospect? Direct mail is a prospecting method, right? You're out there getting a message out. It's drumming up possible clients or prospects to bring into your funnel that you can then qualify and go through the next steps with, which will jump in. Facebook ads, internet ads, Google ads, YouTube ads, WhatsApp ads, Instagram ads, TikTok ads. I can run all these different ads that will do the prospecting part for me, right? If they're targeted right to your ideal target client, because again, that's the most important part to prospect effectively is knowing exactly who your best target is. Doesn't mean that's the only person you sell, but you have to know who they are. And then find a prospecting method that hits them, whether it's direct mail, a Facebook ad. I can target those people through these prospecting means, bring them in so that I can then start working on the next steps, right? Which is step 2. That's your pre-approach and your preparation. Pre-approach and preparation. So going back to this cold call list as an example, right? We have a cold call list, right? That's our prospecting method, right? We put our list together. We've assembled it based as closely around our ideal target as we can. And then now that we have our list, we have to start preparing and doing pre-approach. That is basically just making contact. It's really that simple. I'm reaching out and I'm making contact. Or actually, I'm sorry, I'm getting slightly ahead. Pre-approach is getting ready to make contact. So preparation. I don't believe in over preparing to the extent that it paralyzes you in execution. But there are some things that you can do to prepare. For example, on this cold call list, we have one very specific purpose. Our goal in it is to identify people that are turning 65 that need some help, and we're pushing them or fact finding towards a Medicare supplement plan, which is compliant to do. I can cold call and try to sell MedSup all day, right? And then we have pivot points in there as well. So Our preparation is simple. One, what are the rates in that area for Medicare supplement plans? So when the agent is calling that list, he already has his quote engine up and running, because on his list, he knows exactly who his target is. He knows what their zip code is. He knows what their gender is, and he knows what their age is. Technically, they're all 65, so it's perfect. He doesn't have to change the age. He just has to flip gender and zip code every once in a while. And that way, if he's engaged in a conversation, he has the ability to immediately drop a rate and use that as kind of bait to reel him in, right? So we have his quote engine set up where it's sitting on plan in rates for any of the zip codes that he's hitting. So no matter who he's talking to, he can immediately reference a rate point as a gauge, right, on their interest, etc. So he is prepared in that method, right? The other things that he's prepared with in pre-approach is pivot points. If you're making calls, if you're doing any kind of prospecting and you're trying to sell product A, you need to set up a pivot point to products B or C. This is absolutely, especially true in the Medicare space, and I would say it's probably true in P&C, annuities, life, et cetera, right? I'm targeting this list to sell them Medicare supplements, but if I call someone on this list and I find out they're already in a Medicare Advantage plan, for example, I know I can't try to sell them a Medicare Advantage plan on a cold call, number one. So that's out of the box. Plus, we're outside of OEP, so I can't try to sell them a Medicare Advantage plan anyway, because they're locked in through the rest of the year, disregarding any possible SEPs they might have. But we're just going to eliminate all that. So what are my pivot products? If I run into someone with an MA, then my pivot product would be hospital indemnity. I'm still compliant because I can cold call and sell hospital indemnity on the same call, right? Or it might be short-term care, right? Those are kind of two of my big pivot points. Or it might be cancer insurance. It's a little bit up to me. My favorite one's going to be hospital indemnity on that call, because when I'm cold calling for Medicare supplement, I'm prospecting, and that means I want to know, where do I go? What is my pivot point when they say this and they throw the curveball at me? How do I pivot? And this was also, I learned this really well when I was marketing as a wholesale marketer, right? I'd get my list of agents, saying everything's the same, like nothing changed. I would develop a prospect list of my ideal prospect that I wanted to target as an agent that I was recruiting. I would call that agent and I would say, hey, are you in the Medicare space? Are you selling Medicare products? And most of the time I already knew if they were or not. And if he said, no, I'm in the life insurance space, then I was prepared to not just say, oh, you're not a prospect, never mind, and hang up, to pivot to now, what life insurance products do I have that I might be able to recruit that agent for, and weasel, terrible way to say that, but weasel my way into a relationship with this guy. So maybe I can develop something with him. So same concept here. In your preparation and your pre-approach, one, do you have your script ready? Do you know what you're going to say? Do you know what your pivot points are in your script? Pretty simple, right? Preparation. Prior proper preparation prevents piss poor performance. You've probably heard that before. So be prepared, right? Have a quote engine up and running with rates that you're already looking at in the area, or plans, right? Maybe you're calling a lead response and you are calling for Medicare Advantage in a compliant manner. You should damn sure already be looking at plans to have an idea of kind of where your client is headed, especially if you've gotten to the point where you're through your scope and all of that, whatever the case may be. Like, you should definitely be prepared and look at the territory that you're selling to, like have it in front of you. I know what's going on in that territory. I know what kind of rates are out there. I know what kind of plans are available, and I have my script and I have my pivot points. Fairly simple, pre-approach and approach. Moving along, now we have approach. This is actual making contact. This is when we actually pick up the phone and call them and say, hey, John, it's Tony, right? Fairly simple. The approach is not only where we're going to do our best to make contact with them. And again, this doesn't matter if it's a cold call, doesn't matter if I'm calling a lead response, someone that requested information, etc. Right? The approach is basically just getting the client on the phone or in their house, right? Knocking on the door and getting into the house so that you can, one, establish rapport, qualify them. Those are the two most important parts in this approach step of the process, right? I want to make contact, I want to build some rapport, and I want to start the qualification process. Because if I can't qualify them right, it's going to be hard to present them right, which is our next step. Pretty simple, right? So again, approach, make contact. Fairly simple, right? Establish rapport, start the qualification process, find out what their pain points are. Because in the presentation, the fourth step in the process of sales, this is where you attack the pain point and you present your products as the solution. My buddy Greg Gerbikian wrote a whole book about this basic setup this step in the sales process when he wrote a book called Sell the Problem, Not the Solution. If you can convince your client and sell them on the problem that they have and make them understand, like, hey, Medicare has a 20% coinsurance. Most of my clients don't want to pay a 20% coinsurance because it's uncapped. You don't know what you're going to end up spending. 20% of a doctor visit, not a big deal. Doctor visit's about $250, which means you're on the hook for $50. But the average stay in a hospital in Texas is about $15,000. And that's just assuming you just spend 3 simple nights in the hospital and nothing major happens to you. No surgeries, no other major labs, tests, etc. That's just basically a 3-day overnight stay. You're looking at 15 grand, which would mean Medicare pays 80%. You're on the hook for 20%. Most of my clients don't want to pay a $3,000 copayment for their hospital stay, so they buy a low-cost Medicare supplement plan, right? And you start to present that solution. So you have to sell the problem, make sure that they understand it, and then position your solution as the savior, so to speak, to their pain point, right? In your presentation step of the process, again, there's going to be more fact-finding going on, especially in something complex like Medicare. You're not going to get all of your questions out in the approach section, so some of that's going to move in there. You're going to want to make sure that you're doing storytelling, right? Because facts tell, stories sell, right? So if you have real case scenarios, people that you've worked with that you can lean on and use those stories to help sell that pain point and ultimately position your product. And then most importantly, focus on personalizing it to them to frame their needs. And again, your product is a solution. Fairly simple. Presentation's the fourth step, right? So just do a real quick recap, right? Step 1, prospecting. Step 2, the pre-approach and the preparation. Step 3 is the approach. Step 4 is the presentation, which moves us on to the fifth item is handling objections. Now, understand that while as much as I like handling objections as part of the sales process, I kind of feel like it's more of a skill set and not necessarily a step. And this is especially true to if you're doing what we're doing right now, which is cold calling, because you're going to get objections from step 1 all the way down, right? They're not going to wait until your presentation to start throwing objections at you. That is definitely where most objections come, but not always. Objections are usually going to come throughout the entire sales presentation from beginning to end, right? From me picking up the phone and saying, hey, John, it's Tony, and him saying, I'm not interested. And then maybe I decide to overcome that because that is an objection or not, right? But handling objections is a step or a piece of the process regardless. So as agents, as salespeople, we need to learn how to better understand and handle objections. When I was a brand new salesperson, I had a little box that had all the most common objections I would hear. Little index card, I should say, is boxes with index cards. And it had all of the most common objections I might hear, right? It's too expensive. I got to talk to my wife about it, right? Different things like that. And then I would have my response to those objections. I did a similar thing with my new guy yesterday, except there wasn't so much on objections. I started him on just the FAQs that your client or your prospect might throw at you. So I had an FAQ list. Here's a bunch of questions that they're probably going to ask you, right? They're going to operate similar to objections. And here's how you can answer those and move back into your sales process, right? Fairly simple. So when it comes to handling objections, there's 2 primary methods that I'm familiar with that tend to work. And they're both basically the same concept. They just use a different alliteration. You've probably heard of them before. The first one that I'm familiar with is called agree, answer, and ask. Someone gives you an objection. You agree with them. You don't challenge them and like, you're an idiot. You're wrong. That's not how this works. You're like, hey, I totally understand. I agree. You're right. Right? You're okay for feeling that way. Agree with them. Answer the question or the objection that they're giving you, and then ask them another question to retake control of the conversation. That is probably the easiest, simple recipe for overcoming objections. Agree, answer, and ask. Hey, I totally agree with what you're saying. A lot of my clients have said the same thing to me, right? Medicare is expensive, right? Or Medicare doesn't cover everything, whatever their little objection might be. Answer their question, answer their statement or question, and ask them a new question that gets them back on the line. It's basically a concept in straight line selling. And I've heard a lot of people talk about straight line selling, and they put it on this pedestal like it's this complex mastermind selling method. It's not. It's really not. It is a simplified understanding of the sales process, that understanding that the shortest distance between 2 points is what? It's a straight line. So how do I move my prospect from prospect to client the most efficiently? Well, I do it in a straight line, and that's part of where learning this process comes in. If I understand this process and this workflow of moving someone from prospect to client, then I can develop it in a straight line process so that when I do get objections, I can easily run my cycle. Because the idea is that your straight line is moving, the objection happens, which it always will, and you agree, answer, and ask in a little circle like a roundabout, and you get them back on your straight line. The second common method to overcome objections is basically the same damn thing, but a little bit different, and that's called feel, felt, found. You've heard this before. This is old school sales stuff. Hey, I understand how you feel. A lot of my clients felt the same way, but when they found out that I have the best rates in town, they bought insurance from me. Whatever it might be. I understand how you feel. A lot of people felt the same way. You're not right. You're not alone. You're giving them some social proof. But what they found is that ultimately you're wrong and you should just buy insurance from me. Right? Obviously, I'm using very simplified language for that, but that is the process. And again, you're moving in a straight line. You're going to handle that objection and get them back on the straight line. Same concept. Personally, I like agree, answer, and ask more because I don't feel like it's as canned. I feel like just about anybody that's alive now that may have spent some time in sales, even if it's just at retail sales, they've probably heard of the feel, felt, found formula, or they've used it themselves. And it just sounds a little too canned to me. You can certainly elevate it. You can drop the words feel, felt, found and still get the same concept across. Personally, I like agree, answer, and ask. Hey, totally agree with you. Right? And this is why it's that way. But let me ask you a question to show that I'm still in control. Agree, answer, and ask. So handling objections is a skill set, but it is part of the sales process. It's very rare that any prospect will move from prospect to client without any objections. It can happen, but it's very rare. And I would say if that is happening, you're probably a phenomenal agent that is very good at knocking out the objections yourself before you ever get the opportunity to have to hear them. You're hitting them on the head up front and banging them out before they can ever deliver them to you. Another skill set as well. Moving along. Our favorite one, step 6, is the close, right? This is the 6th step. And don't confuse these steps that I'm giving you with the 5 steps to a conversation, which we've talked about before. That fits into this. This is the workflow of how a sale is made from very beginning to end, right? The process, the workflow of bringing people into your business. So obviously we got to close them. After we present them, we close them. The best way to close is simply through asking questions. Asking the right questions determining if they are ready to move forward. And the best closer is always, as they say, always be closing, is always looking to close people, not necessarily just jump ahead from prospecting to close or from presentation to close, but they're able to use closing statements that move them through the process, step by step by step, right? We've closed out this understanding and let's move to the next one. move to the next one until you get to the final close, which is asking for the sale. And even if you're selling a zero premium Medicare Advantage plan, you ultimately have to ask for the sale. Most people will not give you the sale without you asking for it. Some people will, right? There are definitely people out there that are very hot prospects. These are inbound people. They see you, they like you, they know, like, and trust you. They give you a call. They verify that you're the right guy. You give them a simple presentation and they give you their business. They throw money at you. But those are rare. Like, normally we have to earn their trust, present the solution. Hopefully we did a good job, and then close them that this is the right solution for them. And we have to ask for the sale, and sometimes just tell them, right? Tell them what to do next. Don't be afraid. Like, you are the authority on the call, and you should always present yourself as the authority on the call in a professional and nice manner. So don't be afraid to just tell them what the next step is and do it. You don't have to ask for it so much. Just tell them, hey, so the next step is we're going to fill out this enrollment. It's going to go to Humana. They're going to approve it. Then it's going to go to Medicare, and they're going to approve it. And then your policy will be in effect. But we got to get it started today. What is your Medicare number? And that's the biggest key in closing, is anytime you ask that closing question, shut up. Don't say another word. It becomes like, as soon as you close someone, it becomes a game of the first person that talks loses. And you don't want to lose. You want to gain that client. So when you ask that closing question or you make that closing statement, be quiet. Shut your mouth. Don't oversell. Don't overpush. Don't overclose. Just close them. Ask for the sale, the permission to do the enrollment, and get it running. One of my favorite ways to close people is through underwriting questions, whether it's an actual health question that needs underwriting or just one of the questions on the application that I need. And I love going for some of the hard ones up front, like your Medicare number, right? So if I'm talking to someone and I'm working on a close or I'm getting ready to close the app, like, I'm just going to pull the app up and I'm going to ask them one of the first questions at the top of the app, or maybe for their Medicare number, something to that effect, to hit them hard, get them closed, and get them ready. Because as soon as they give me that piece of information, it's done. It's done. The app is getting closed. I can pretty much guarantee you. All right, last one. And this is where I think a lot of agents actually just plain suck. Not you, maybe you, but not you. But some of you definitely do. Follow up. And this is where retention comes in. Are you following up with your clients after you close the sale? Are you calling up to check on them, make sure that they're okay, make sure they're happy with the product they bought from you? Make sure that they're happy with the insurance plan that they bought from you? Are you providing them some post-sale love? You certainly should be. And I will agree definitely that your follow-up methods are going to differ from one product line or industry to the next. If I'm in P&C, I probably don't have nearly as many follow-up steps in the sales process as I do as a Medicare agent. Because after we close, I mean, I can tell you how we do it. When we close a Medicare Advantage or any plan here, particularly Medicare Advantage plans, because that seems to be the most popular. When we close a Medicare Advantage enrollment, we touch that person by phone, email, text, one way or another, or all three, at least 6 times. Just doing follow-up is the primary purpose of those touch points. We feel like that is the proper number. We call them 3 times in the first 30 days, and then we call them 3 times in the next 60 days after that. The biggest reason we do that is understanding that if we close a Medicare Advantage plan during AEP, then it starts January 1. Well, we know they have 90 days to think about it and second guess themselves. So I want to call them at least as often as I can, for the most part, within reason. But we found 6 is a really good cadence. So we're calling them 6 times in that first 90 days to make sure they're happy with the plan that we got them and they're not having problems, right? Because if they are having problems, if we don't catch it, another agent's going to catch it, and then we're going to lose our business. And this is also true for our primary market, the turning 65 person. Because same thing, when you enroll someone during IEP into a Medicare Advantage plan, what do they get? They get 90 days to test drive your plan and make sure you advised them right and you got them in the plan that's going to serve them best. So same concept. I'm going to touch that T65-year-old 6 times over 90 days. And it's technically, you could say it's 18 times because it's not just a phone call. We're calling them, we're texting them, and we're emailing them to check in on them and make sure one way or another they're going to get our message. So ultimately, you could say that we are touching them 18 times from 3 different channels or frequencies during that first 90 days. We do not want to lose that business. We spend a lot of money to go out in our prospecting method to get that business. So last thing I want to do is just close it and move on with my life. No. Doesn't work that way. Works that way in Medicare supplements pretty well, but it doesn't work that way in the Medicare Advantage world. You have got to follow up with your people, make sure that they are happy, right? And technically, I missed one. We touch them 19 times because I forgot about the thank you card, right? They get a handwritten thank you card as well. So we give a ton of follow-up to our clients. We have a great retention rate first year, and our second year retention rate continues to get better, and even third year is getting better. But follow-up is the key to retaining your business. Another great part about follow-up, what else can you do during follow-up? You can get referrals during follow-up. You can get cross-market sales during follow-up. But you can't get any of that stuff if you're not following up. So make sure that after you close that sale, you were calling that client to check in on them. Even if it's just car insurance, man. And I've never had a car insurance agent call me and check on me after the policy was sold, but I would appreciate it. Like, I would think that would be a great thing if he would call me and go, hey, man, I just want to double check on you. Did you get everything that I told you were going to get in the mail, your policy, or yada, yada, this or that or the other? Awesome. Make sure you put that in your glove box. Just anything, any nicety, or even a thank you card. That would be dope. I appreciate that. So think about that in your process as well. So just running back through those real quick, just to remind you, maybe write these down. But again, step 1, prospecting. Step 2 is the pre-approach and the preparation. Step 3 is the approach. That is actually making contact with your prospect. Step 4 is presentation. That's where you are taking the pain points that you've identified in your approach, and you're presenting your solution to the pain points. Obviously, handling objections comes along truthfully in every step. Step 6, closing the business, right? Getting that check. And then finally, following up and retaining your business. Now, if you have a CRM, and I hope you do, it very well might have a workflow or a pipeline function in it where you can build in some of these steps. But think about your workflow. Look at how this process works. And what's the best part about this, in my opinion, is if you build a process like this, right, and you understand, you take these 7 steps and maybe you build them in your actual sales pipeline. I'm prospecting this way. Here's how I do my pre-approach and preparation. Here's how I approach my clients. Here's how I like to do presentations, scripts, etc. Here's my practice for handling objections. I've got some of my common objections and rebuttals that I'm working on. Here's how I close, and here's how I follow up. You can build this workflow into a pipeline, and if you do that, you can easily identify through the metrics of how that pipeline is working when people are dropping off. Like, man, I'm getting people in the prospecting, but I'm losing them in approach. Well, then maybe something's wrong with your approach, and you need to work on that. Or maybe I'm great at prospecting. I'm getting a ton of prospects in my funnel. I'm prepared. I've got a phenomenal approach. I'm able to get into a lot of sits and presentations. But man, I suck at handling objections, and I can't get them to that point to close them. Well, then you need to work on objections, and you need to work on being a stronger closer, right? Or it could even be presentation. But if you build this process into your system, whether it's a CRM or whatever, and this, I don't care if you're an individual agent or not, having that workflow built and moving your people through it is going to help you identify where your deficiencies are so that you can work on that segment and improve the efficiency of the overall process. Another way that you can look at this, if you're an individual agent, right? Again, this is a solo job, so you're doing all of these steps. You're prospecting, you're handling the pre-approach and presentation, you're approaching and making contact with your clients, you're the one presenting the products, you're in charge of learning how to handle objections, you're closing, and you're doing the follow-up. You're certainly a busy agent, and I know there's a bunch of you out there that are having to deal with this entire process from beginning to end by yourself, right? Again, my first recommendation to you is get a CRM that has a pipeline function in it where you can build these steps and build a workflow around it so that you can improve your process, right? And find out where you're weak and do it better. Other things you can do, look at outsourcing different areas that might help you, whether it be through automations or through hiring virtual assistant. You can hire a virtual assistant to do prospecting and pre-approach or approach stuff for you, right? Now, on the other hand, if you're an agency or you're trying to scale your business, you need to look at this process, these 7 steps in the sales process, and identify where you can plug other people into it, right? One of my favorite people in this industry is a guy named Dante Cantu. Some of you have probably heard of him. He also goes by Richard, but he was the very first guy in the business, truthfully, that figured out how to high volume sell Medicare supplements by phone. This was about the advent of the very first e-app that existed in the Medicare space. And how did he do it? Well, he created this process, his sales process, and then he took people and he defined their roles within that process. So he had a person or a team of people that are responsible for prospecting, pre-approach, and approach. He has another person that's responsible for presentation, handling objections, and close. And he has another person or a team of people that are responsible for follow-up and retention. Right? So your prospecting people are only doing prospecting and pre-approach stuff or approach stuff. They're very good at it. It's their specialty. It's the only 3 steps that they work on. My agent, right, is good at presentations, handling objections, and closing business. And that's all they had to work on over and over and over. Every call is the same process. I'm presenting a solution. I'm taking the pain points that have already been discovered, presenting my solution, handling objections, and closing the business. And then it moves to the next person in the process, right, that handles follow-up, retention, service, etc. Talk to Danielle Kunkel at Boomer Benefits. Very similar things she's got going on over there. And that's why she's been able to scale something massive, is because she has defined roles for her people within the sales process. You guys handle prospecting. You guys handle presentations, closes, or sales. And you guys handle service and follow-up, right? So if you're an individual agent, you need to find tools that can help you build this process so that you can identify your weak points, create efficiencies that help you be more productive, maybe occasionally find some areas you can outsource to. The easiest 2 areas to outsource to if you're an independent agent all by yourself is going to be your prospecting and your service, your follow-up retention. You can easily find a virtual assistant for a good price that can help you in the prospecting and approach ends, right, where they're calling the people and setting up your appointments. All you're doing is presenting plans, handling objections, and closing business. And then you have another VA that comes in behind you and does your follow-up and your service work and retention work for you. And if they discover problems, they kick them back into your presentation funnel. Fairly simple. And that's exactly what we're building over here at Avila, right? I've got a team. Yeah, I got a team, technically one guy right now. I got a team that's handling approach, right? All of our prospecting is done online. Facebook does our prospecting for us. We run ads. It's targeted. That's the one pulling in the prospects. That's our prospecting method, right? And then we have a VA that does pre-approach and approach. So he's prepared. He knows exactly what he's going to say when a lead comes from this direction or that direction. He knows, oh, this person responded to that ad. They're interested in this. Cool. Here's my approach. This is the script I use. These are my pivot points. And his goal is to do nothing but set an appointment for the agent so that they can come in, pick it up at step 4, which is present the solution, handling objections, and close the enrollment. After that's done, the agent's back out of the process, and now we have a service person, Juliana. She comes in, calls that client, hey, welcome. Here's your policy number. Here's how it's going to work. And then now she runs that client for the next 90 days through service work and retention. And then after that, the process ends. Pretty simple. So our process is, truthfully, it's about a 6 to 9 month process when we look at turning 65 business. We're prospecting 6 to 9 months ahead of time, technically. We're getting the business somewhere around their 3-month area of when they turn 65 and can get moving in Medicare. And then we have another 3 months after that is all just retention, follow-up, service, and love. So that's the process, man. It's 7 simple steps. It's the workflow for how you find business, discover or qualify that business, present your solutions, close it, make them clients, and then service them and follow up after the fact. So take that, put it in your business. Hopefully it will help you streamline your process to, again, discover the deficiencies that are in it so that you can work on those to make them strengths. And ultimately, it's going to make you more efficient, increase your productivity. So thank you guys for tuning in. I love it, love it, love it. And we will see you guys next week, Tuesday training. Have a good one.